Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining one of my favorite people, Dr. Todd Ovokaitys, and me, Dr. Amber Wolf, today for our lovely time together. And I'm very excited. Todd is coming to Colorado in January for our annual KRYON event. And so we're going to talk about what he's been up to, which is always something unusual and amazing, and what he'll be talking about at the Boulder event and the workshop that he's going to do on Monday after the weekend. So yeah, we have some wonderful time to spend together. So welcome, Dr. Todd. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, so nice to be on the air with you, Amber. Great reconnecting again through the whole interdimensional trans akashic experience.
Yeah, all of that and more. And
Mm-hmm.
more. Well, I'm excited that you're coming to Boulder. It's been a few years now, so I know that you've been very busy stirring things up, mixing things up, doing your alchemy in the world. So let's talk about what is new with you.
Yeah. The big developments in the past 2 years really have been the work we've done with stem cells, and we have been blessed with not one but two discoveries and innovations, the first one of which revolutionizes the broad range of stem cell therapy with any type of cell, and the second which gives a uniquely powerful cell that each person can provide. And
would you just quickly say something about what is a stem cell and how does it differ from generally cells in our body?
Mm-hmm. Well, the stem cell is different from the flower cell or the root cell.
Okay. Great. This is really clearing things up. Thank you.
To get to the basics, the body contains 200 different types of cells. Interesting that we create such complexity out of only a relative handful of cells. And there is a capacity for self-regeneration and self-renewal that is the stem cell system. So a stem cell could really be considered a type of reserve population. And a stem cell divides and creates a population that can either replace a cell that's become old or damaged, or it literally preserves the reservoir. It's almost like having gas in your tank, and the gas can replicate itself. And the gas either gets burned or it stays in the pool to be burned. It's really somewhat like that. It's a unique kind of self-renewal that allows significant degrees of regeneration. Now, there is a unique sophistication and complexity of stem cells in that there's a whole hierarchy of them, all the way from a totipotent cell, which would be early embryonic cells that can make a whole new person. And then after the early embryonic stage, cells can be so-called pluripotent. And that's really where the action is. Totipotent cells are very robust, but they can have potential medical complications. So in general, these are not used in stem cell therapy, and it's not a type of cell that we recommend using or have used thus far, unless there's a lot more clinical and safety data.
So we have the embryonic cell, stem cell that makes our body, and then we have cells that replace themselves for the rest of our lives. Is that correct?
Right. And these stem cell pools have their own hierarchy. So a pluripotent stem cell literally can become any of the three germ layers and then any of the cells of those three layers. So a pluripotent stem cell can become anything, head to toe. It can replace
Okay.
a brain cell, an eye cell, a tongue cell, a chin
Oh,
cell.
okay.
Whereas there's another level of differentiation that goes into the three germ layers. So without going into a big discussion of embryology and how the first little ball of cells creates three layers, and those layers then become different types of tissues, there is that first level differentiation, and those layers make specific types of tissues. So for example, ectoderm makes skin and nerve tissue.
Okay.
Mesoderm makes muscle and connective tissue. Endoderm makes digestive tissues like stomach, large and small intestines, liver, and pancreas. And there are stem cells that are specific to the germ layers that can then become tissues of that particular germ layer, but not everything. And then you get interdifferentiated stem cells that can just make that tissue. And virtually every tissue has been found to have stem cells. So that old rub that still really bugs me when I see it written in books, that the neurons in the brain do not regenerate. When you lose them, they're gone. It's just completely wrong. There's
Oh,
like
okay. That's the
three
good news,
different types.
right?
What's that?
That's the good news.
That's very good news. And it's not new news, actually. It's very good news. And somehow basic science work doesn't get into textbooks. What it bothers me when there is a book that is authoritative, that makes a claim, that puts a limitation on our biology that simply isn't true. So the brain has three different types of stem cells, not even just one. And the skin has a type of stem cell, and the liver does, and blood-forming cells do. So they get into end-differentiated cells that are stem cells for that particular tissue. So there's a whole hierarchy of different types of stem cells, and their whole purpose is to keep the body as young, healthy, and regenerated as possible.
Okay. And so the ones that you're working with are called?
Cool.
Really cool.
Really cool.
Amazingly cool.
So the ones we're working with are in that upper stratum that we call pluripotential. And what has been astonishing, shocking even, is the discovery that our bodies generate a powerful class of stem cells from the time we're about 8 to 12 cells old.
Okay.
So from the time we're barely even a microscopic dot, we start making from large embryonic stem cells teeny tiny, very small stem cells. And they're called very small embryonic-like stem cells, or VSELs. And this jargon gets a little bit wordy.
There's
You
a
can call
lot of,
them
yeah.
V cells for short.
Okay.
And that's the way scientists talk about them in shorthand. And a V cell is truly very small. They are so small that thousands of them could fit into a typical adult mesenchymal stem cell, for example. And what is unique about them is that by the time we're born, we've formed large numbers of them that circulate through our blood and bone marrow, and they go to sleep. They enter a state of hibernation.
Wow. Which begs the question, why? What are they waiting for?
Good question. That would be fodder for a metaphysical debate. One could argue that the biblical figures, for example, Methuselah, Genesis 5:27, who was reported biblically to have lived 969 years, and other biblical figures that lived for several hundreds of years. When I read that, I really questioned whether they were talking about years or months, for example. Yet, if
Good
this
point.
mechanism were active, where these one-day-old cells are able to periodically activate, that mechanism alone could give a way for people to live hundreds of years.
Hmm.
And if that mechanism were active at some point in our past and then became inactive, that would account for why people don't live that long anymore. Now, the why of it is a different question. The why of it
Yeah, that's the magic
could have many
question.
explanations. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
whatever, the $1,000,000 question.
yeah.
If they were active at one point, why did they not become so? And there can be answers in consciousness, there can be answers in genetic shifts over time, epigenetic changes with respect to the environment. Some fringy folks would say it's something that extraterrestrials of certain types did to restrict people to whatever the ET's wishes were for us, mining gold, whatever the case may be.
Those fringy guys and gals, who
Yeah,
knows what they're thinking?
who knows? And whatever the reason our bodies produce these cells, and especially why they go into hibernation, it creates something truly extraordinary, which is that other types of stem cells in the body, although they tend to remain relatively youthful for age, do undergo an aging process. So it has been shown, for example, that stem cells from someone's fat, which is actually a good source of stem cells, will be much less robust and less effective clinically from an octogenarian than a teenager.
Okay,
So the utility of stem cell therapy becomes compromised if the person is older and their stem cells are weakened. What is profound, amazing, revelatory, and potentially transformative to the whole field of medicine and regeneration is that these V cells, when they go dormant, retain their newborn characteristics.
wow. So they're just hibernating somewhere, anywhere in particular, and what awakens them?
Well, they're circulating in blood,
Just
and their
not
potency,
active, but they
right?
are okay.
Yeah, and they go through the bone marrow also. And unlike other types of stem cells that require an invasive procedure to invade the bone marrow and get the
Right,
cells out,
right.
these cells don't require anything more invasive than drawing blood.
Wow.
And they're
Okay.
present in high numbers. It's basically as though each of us had stored their cord blood in a freezer for as long as you may have been on the planet, and they are ready to come into action as robust newborn caliber cells whenever they get the wake-up call.
Aha. And so the wake-up call is?
There are different types of wake-up calls. Some of them are chemical, which work to a degree, and one method has been a cold shock method that I've heard about, where you sort of nearly freeze them, and that can wake
Uh-huh.
some of them up. And thus far, the most efficient method that I'm aware of is the use of our laser technology. And we've had the occasion to go into a laboratory of one of the pioneers in this field and look at the methods that he had available to activate the cells. And I'd say I saw roughly 30% of the cells waking up, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
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 And when we used our laser in an experiment he had set up, that was increased to about a 90% level of
Wow.
activation.
So it wakes them up, but it does. I mean, when I hear laser, I think of like something that can cut through steel. So it's a completely different kind of laser that can wake them up and keep them happy, not fry them. And and then you do what once
Mhm.
they're awake?
So it's a deeply dimensionally enfolded complex waveform. So it's about complexity and quality of information that creates a vibrational signature lock and key that wakes them up. And the energy is of low power, so it's at a level that it's not going to injure the cells because of heating them too much.
Okay.
And it is fortuity, again, it's like divine coincidence that we've happened upon a particular waveform and frequency configuration that wakes up the dormant stem cells and does more than wake them up. The other part of the experiment that was huge was that the cells not only went from being dormant to active, as evidenced by them starting to grow cytoplasm and get bigger and show evidence of metabolic activity, they also began to replicate.
All by themselves, out of
Mm.
their environment of
Well,
the body
after the laser stimulation, it
after the
wasn't
link.
right. It wasn't just the fact that they became active; they also
Right.
began to replicate and self-expand.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm.
So it's almost as if those little stem cells were waiting or are waiting to be stimulated in a specific way that lets them really do this work that hasn't been done.
Right.
And
So,
why would a person want to do this for themselves?
mhm. Three general reasons.
Okay.
One, for anti-aging purposes itself, given that there is an aging mechanism in the cells, a few actually. The one that's most popularly known is telomere shortening. And older cells tend to have shorter telomeres than cells at a more youthful age. As cells divide, the telomeres tend to get shorter and shorter. And that's what is believed to limit the human lifespan. They get too short and the cells stop dividing. Well, the telomeres on these sleeping stem cells are newborn length.
Wow.
So it's
So as good
resetting
as
the,
they get, right?
what's that?
As good as they get.
As good as it gets. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had hoped as I've been working with stem cells, I had the conviction that we would one day figure out how to take stem cells that, say, were 80 years old and put them in an environment where we could regrow their telomeres to newborn length, or at least a lot longer. And I expected that it would take some years before we figured out the particular strategy, a particular set of signals and the environment in which to put them in to make that work. The fact that we have circulating in our blood stem cells that are dormant, that aren't aging, that once you bring them into activity are reset to newborn caliber telomeres, it is truly the best of all possible worlds for regeneration medicine.
Wow. All right. So you can use stem cell therapy for
General anti-aging head to toe.
general anti-aging and
If there is a specific issue, then the next part of the discovery equation, our initial discovery, the one that was already in place as we began working with actual stem cell therapy was another aspect of what the so-called QI laser platform can do, what we call quantum information lasers, which is creating the unique waveforms that I describe in the lectures. That when we use a particular configuration, it is a stem cell homing signal. That wherever we direct the beam, the cells are attracted to go there, adhere there, and repair there.
Okay, so say you had a shoulder injury or an organ, like a heart valve or something that was not healthy as the rest of you, and you did the procedure to get your own stem cells out of your blood. And so do you re-inject the stem cells intravenously or into the particular area that needs treatment, and how does the laser help all of that work?
Mm-hmm. The laser is very significant in the process. The first part is having active, robust, viable, useful stem cells. And stem cells can either come from the same person, called autologous, or can come from a different person called allogeneic. And while allogeneic cells do have some clinically studied and reported benefits, they are often not to the same degree as occur with cells that are a perfect match. So if someone had saved their cord blood, for example, that would be a perfect source of cells harvested when they were 1 day old. You couldn't ask for more.
Right.
Other than the V cells that we've now discovered maintain those newborn characteristics. So once you have a good source of cells, then the question is, how do you get them where you need them to go? And if you inject them intravenously and don't have any way to give a focusing signature that gets them where you want them to go and concentrates them there, and particularly integrates them in the tissue by enhancing the cell adhesion system, then the cells will wander around randomly. Okay. And there may be an inflammatory or other signal that gets the cells there. And the reality is it tends to be the luck of the draw. Results can be very variable, and it can take a long time to see any results at all, if any even occur. So the second part of it, having the laser guidance mechanism, is really a way to accelerate and intensify the results. So for example, the first shoulder that we treated had been in a person who had a series of athletic injuries, multiple dislocations, and had a painful shoulder with restricted motion for over 30 years.
Wow.
With joints, if they are significantly injured, we often will inject cells directly into the joint while also giving them systemically. And then the laser does two things, at least I believe it does two things. It will recruit cells from the blood to go into and around the joint. And then the cells that are directly in the joint, it will give them the information to adhere to the surface linings, the cartilage surface in particular, faster than would otherwise be the case. So with that particular person, and keeping in mind that stem cell therapy often takes 3 or 4 weeks to show any results at all, within about 15 minutes, he had no pain and full range of motion.
Wow. After 30 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, but sometimes it takes longer to see something change, 3 to 4 weeks. But still, if you've been in pain for 30 years, 3 to 4 weeks is nothing, really.
Right. Even that.
So now you've said general anti-aging, and then specifically for treatment of an injury or an illness. And then what else? The third thing.
Cosmetic, baby.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Uh-huh. Have you seen Ruby since her procedure?
I have. Yeah, I'm jealous.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. And so talk a little about her procedure so that people that haven't seen it, like I have, I saw her during the procedure, of course. She
Hmm.
took a picture of herself and sent it to me.
Yeah.
Not everyone listening to this will have seen that. So, yeah, talk a little bit about that. That was really fascinating to me.
Hmm. Right. So in the pre-treatment, we took photos, and I don't think we would mind our saying that there were uh, lines around her eyes and lines in her forehead.
Hmm.
And the procedure involved harvesting the cells that we talk about, the so-called V cells, separating them from blood, waking them up with the laser, and then as a cosmetic procedure, they can be directly injected into the face to reduce wrinkles and rebuild collagen and make things look younger and stretchier, or into the scalp to grow hair.
Wow. I want all of it. I want the rejuvenation chamber.
Well, this is
This is
bringing back
today's
ancient
rejuvenation
technology.
chamber, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just more
Wow.
portable than it used to
Yes.
be.
Yeah. 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 Wow. So that being
So,
said,
right. And to complete Ruby's story,
yeah.
I saw photos from 2 weeks after the procedure, which involved the injection of the cells directly into the face in an artistic way. It's not just shooting them in there. There is a lot of art to where they go and how they go and how they shape the filling in process. And that was also coupled with a technique that is really being used and quite effectively for rejuvenation, which is the micropuncture method with little
I've
tiny
heard
needle
that.
marks that stimulate the
Yeah.
skin to build collagen. So that was
Right.
part of it. And the photo I saw 2 weeks later, there were essentially no lines in her forehead.
Right. Right.
And the lines around her eyes were much reduced. She looked easily 15 years younger.
Wow. Wow. All right. So,
And we're growing hair too.
wow, that's amazing. I had no
Hmm.
idea about the hair and the skin. Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay. So, how long have you been experimenting and working with stem cell therapy? It's been quite some time, hasn't it?
The actual clinical side of the equation has been about 3 to 4 years now.
Okay. And when you're in Colorado in January, you will be doing some stem cell therapy at a clinic in Boulder, correct?
That's right.
That's
That
right.
will be an opportunity for people to experience. That's true.
Yeah. And so people can find out how to schedule those appointments by writing to or calling.
Probably the best way is to connect directly with our coordinator, which is Margie Harrison
Yeah.
at mharrison at KeyGenix, KIGENIX.com.
Okay.
And
Um,
KeyGenix.com has general information about what we're doing.
Say the name of that website again. Is it KI?
KeyGenix,
Q?
QI for quantum information,
Okay. Genix.
Genix, GENIX, yep.
Okay. So I also know that there's a twist to this that
Hmm.
has brought in another amazing modality that I've had the opportunity to experience and also study a little bit with Enrique Baron, and that's
Hmm.
biological decoding. So, would you speak to the use of, or speak to what biological decoding is and to the use of it with stem cell therapy?
Mhm. Biological decoding is yet another revelatory new discovery. And I say new in that it's relatively new to me. It's been around and developing for about 40 years. Yet, I believe it really has evolved into a new generation, a new level with its latest pioneers, including Enrique Boran, as well as another very gifted practitioner named Isabel Benarus. And the profundity of biological decoding is the core belief, the core assertion that a disease is a word spoken not with the mouth but with the body. And that system holds that any pain or dysfunction or disturbance in our biology is primarily caused by an unresolved emotional stress or conflict. And if our goal in regeneration medicine is to assist someone that has a painful or dysfunctional organ or body part or system, it's one aspect to provide the reparative cells to heal the physical aspect of it. And if the psycho-emotional aspect of it is not addressed and relieved, that may prevent the healing from happening, or at least being as complete as it possibly can be. So the two modalities go hand in hand, finding the core emotional stress with the idea that it is the stress that is a focus in the brain that is then sending signals to an organ for that organ to express the biological solution that we would call the illness. That unless that stress is addressed in some way and relieved, the healing may be incomplete or the person may recreate that condition. And sometimes all that is needed to facilitate a healing is to get to the core of that issue, and chronic problems of almost any duration can simply melt away. Now, if you
Can
then
you give an
combine that,
example of that? Could you give an example of how the brain might create, I don't know, how about diabetes? Why would the brain create something like diabetes? And does it have the power to do that? That's kind of news, isn't it? I mean, we think about the pancreas and we think about heredity and we think about, bad diet, not the brain.
Mhm. From the decoding standpoint, diabetes has been thought of as having the two conflicts of resistance and repugnance. So with insulin-resistant diabetes, the blood tends to have a higher level of glucose. And glucose is used for fight or flight. And actually, you asked a particular question that is a little bit controversial in decoding because the understanding has evolved. The
Okay.
original idea was that the diabetic is in a constant state of resistance. They're constantly poised to fight. That's why their blood sugar is high, and that their brain is creating that constant stress signal. So they're responding by being in a constant state of stress and high blood sugar. And if that stress is relieved, then the blood sugar can return to normal. And
Okay.
Enrique himself was an example of that. He was developing diabetes because he was in a chronic fight mode. And then a single sentence that was said to him relieved his stress and his diabetes went away.
What?
Yep.
That seems pretty, you have to say, I have to say, that seems pretty unbelievable and amazing.
Mm-hmm.
One sentence could take
One
away
sentence.
your diabetes.
Yep.
And so that's what the brain heard. And the brain had the ability to change the body chemistry. Is that how it would work?
The brain can control all the cells. Yep.
Wow. Wow. So I know biodecoding is a bigger conversation than we have time for today, but I'm fascinated by how you use it in conjunction with stem cell therapy. It seems like two worlds apart.
Well, our team really is intent on providing the best of the best. You know,
Naturally.
identifying the modalities that really are the most effective, and that goes from condition to condition or scenario to scenario, of course. And there can be sort of many submenus to what is the best for a particular type of condition. In the broadest strokes, my concept is the combination of metabolic medicine, psycho-emotional medicine, and cellular medicine. And in metabolic medicine, I include not only diet and nutrition, but also pharmacology. So drugs also are metabolic because they're influencing the
Mhm.
biochemistry of the system. And then the psycho-emotional piece, it's the brain that's literally coordinating and studying and calibrating the life processes from respiration to cardiac activity to digestive activity, all on down the line.
Mhm.
And then you sometimes simply need more cells. It's simply a function of having the sufficient number of robust, biologically, biochemically active cells to make things work. And what I have found is that for a given person, any one of those modalities can have profound, dramatic, and sometimes quote unquote, almost miraculous seeming results. So any one can be beneficial, and sometimes only one is needed. And there are other times that all three may need to be called into play to go for what the maximum result is. And in my estimation, when the healing is incomplete, the biggest limitation is not biochemical or now even cellular, since we now have a perfect source of
Yeah.
ideally matched stem cells circulating in every person's blood, with one exception that I'll describe, that the reason for an incomplete healing is not having gotten completely to the core of the unresolved emotional piece, which can come from that person's life experience, it can come from their parents, it can come through their genealogy.
So even though they're getting the stem cell treatment and the laser, they will have, it's possible that they won't have as complete a healing as they would if the brain issue uh, is addressed with biodecoding.
Exactly.
Wow, wow. Now that's keep you keep going on beyond the realm of what anyone else is doing, and I love that about who you are. And what I also love is that you're finally being recognized, in my opinion, for the work that you've been doing as not, the woo-woo kind of thing, but this is science and technology that is forming a basis for healing that we haven't had. Full stop.
Thanks for with that reminder, it probably is useful for those watching and have raised a question, well, if this stuff is so great, why doesn't anybody recognize it? Fair point.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the past few weeks, I have accepted an appointment to a group called Best Doctors. And Best Doctors is a Harvard professor originated program with the intention of finding the best practitioners in the world in the various specialties of medicine. And I've just been recognized as a best doctor in stem cell medicine.
Well, congratulations, Todd. You deserve the recognition. I know you have worked hard and long and uniquely. It's not just a nose to the grindstone thing. It's looking at outside of what already exists and creating something that hasn't really been in existence. And so thank you for that. And thank you for continuing to travel the world and do this work. And I know it involves a tremendous amount of research and a tremendous amount of dedication. So thank you for that. And thank you for bringing it to Colorado. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. So these are some of the things that you'll talk about when you're visiting with us in January?
Yes, I believe I have a presentation at the
Yes,
event on the
you
weekend.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the KRYON event in Longmont.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that'll probably be a few highlights of the stem cell work, and there are many actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, as well as maybe a very brief overview of the decoding,
Okay.
a review of some of the very cool stuff we've done with the tones, especially the last choir in Mont Chamonix,
Yeah, that'll be great.
particularly the so-called Lemurian lullabies, which were
Yeah.
Mayan inspired and have been marvelous.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing that in person. I've only heard it recorded, so
Mm-hmm.
that'll be great.
So that will be nice to connect with everyone in Boulder at that gathering. And then Monday, I'm doing a 4-hour discussion, basically, that will allow people to have a much greater depth of understanding of what we're doing with the combination of, as I said, psycho-emotional medicine, cellular medicine, and metabolic medicine. And what that can mean to every person that's there with respect to overcoming any physical issues they may have, enhancing even their look and appearance, growing hair on the head, for example,
Can't be
and
bad.
and especially overcoming the limitations not just of our biology but also of our psycho-emotional state. So it's about health, longevity, self-transcendence, really moving into a world of diving into what I call the human potential.
I like that. And it sounds like available to people. It's not like you have to specifically understand a lot of science or a lot of psychology or even desire to have stem cell injections or decoding, but really to learn more about the human potential. I mean, isn't really that why we're here in the first place?
I think so.
Yeah, think? Yay. Well, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, anything else before we close?
I will make one comment, which is being in the environment of that mini workshop where the concepts will be discussed. It is profoundly catalytic, and there can be questions and even short answers that may have a profound influence, much more than you would expect for words to make. And I have seen it myself now on a number of occasions with people with whom I've worked, that at a certain point, as you become a student of decoding, that you can sometimes tune in and literally just ask one question or make one statement that relieves something that's been present for a long time.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And I can testify to my own decoding experience. It was so much more than anything I could have thought of, expected, any understanding that I had previously to any other forms of medicine or psychology. So it's really a modality for the new energy, absolutely, and the new millennium.
It's a
In my
laser-like
humble
precision.
opinion.
Yes, it's a laser-like precision tool.
Yeah.
And there are many methods psychologically and even psycho-emotionally that have given people huge benefits over time.
Yeah.
And many modalities that can give the same results as biological decoding, like NET, Psych-K, TFT, EFT, EMDR, the whole alphabet soup
Yeah.
modalities. And without defining those modalities or going into their methods, in general, other processes start with the broad universe of the emotion or issue that may be present, and then uses a way to narrow down to what the particular core focus is to relieve it. And that can give amazing results. What I like about decoding as a practitioner is that it starts with the diagnosis. And there have been 4 decades of research to define for a given medical diagnosis what are the precise conflicts. So often you don't start with the universe of all the emotional stresses or conflicts it could be. You have the diagnosis, you either have a single conflict or a very small list of them that you can just go right into it. And either the person is ready for it, and that's a different issue, or they're not.
Yeah.
And if someone isn't willing to be healed or ready to be healed, it doesn't matter what you use or do. That's a different issue.
Sure.
Whereas if someone is ready, now there are the tools to make the healing available. And it doesn't require hunting through the whole universe of the different types of stresses or emotions or conflicts it can be. This is diagnosis, boom, this is a conflict. Then it's a process of assisting the person to become consciously aware of what's been buried deep in their psyche and to release it.
And to release it. Yeah. And that's a process in itself, isn't it? That's exciting.
Yeah.
I am just so thrilled that you're going to be joining us this year. Thanks for coming to Colorado.
Hey.
Wear your clothes. It'll be January in Colorado, California boy.
Hey, I'll wear my mittens.
Yeah. Thanks so much for spending this time with me, Todd.
Yeah.
It's great to have this information. It's always good to talk to you, and I'm excited to get this out there for people to have more understanding about what you've been up to and what's available in terms of the human potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Great seeing you, sister. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right.
I'll see you next year.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.